Hotel Albuquerque in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and well, maybe I would tomorrow I'll record from the balcony of my junior suite that I have earned because of the work I've done over the years at PES. I guess has entitled me to a junior suite, and I think I want to sit in a way that captures the setting a little bit. Oh, I don't know why I'm wondering it. Yeah, no, it looks kind of shift over a little bit. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, that looks a little bit more like New Mexico. Okay, yeah, that's good. So I'm kind of in the shadow, but you have the beautiful New Mexican sky behind me. Some chilies there. According to Google, today is the birthday of the World Wide Web. 25 years ago, and so, interesting to me because 25 years ago, 1989, if it's the case, and I have my math correct, 1989 was quite a remarkable year, and I've been telling people, and I don't want to digress too much on this, that 89 was my 68, because, like 1968 was the year so many of the counterculture people and movement people talk about as their year, and such an important year. But 89, if it's true that 1989 is the year that is officially the launching of the world, and it sounds right to me, because when I was at Fordham, that we started using laptops and computers, and there was this Unix system, I think it was, or we could email, make messages, and send them to anybody that got on that system, or the VAX. I don't even remember what it was called. But I do know it was possible to do something that was the equivalent of email in 1988. And I got my first desktop computer in the fall of 1988. But the web, it sounds like, got launched in 89, which was, again, a remarkable year, because that's the year that the Hungarians opened the border with Austria, and people started flowing through that border. Then the Berlin Wall fell down, and that all the seismic shifts were going on in South Africa that led to Nelson Mandela's release in February of 1990. So 89. Go 89. Okay, so still in the midst of musings on Socrates, what would become the second chapter of Being and Learning. And I do want to show that it's interesting, because I was having lunch just now and I was trying to figure out the page numbering. For some reason, the page numbering at this point, those are notes that I wrote, got kind of screwy, and I'm not sure how that happened. So this is page 50, and there's some notes here which I wrote. The emphasis here is on the raising of ultimate questions. That was what took up yesterday, and the pathos of thinking. And I write here that I need to define that. And hearing. No, I think it says bearing, and bearing of responses. Who is raising these questions, the ultimate questions? And how are they being raised? It's very much a matter of the conditions for the possibility of raising and exploring these ultimate questions. It's very much the matter of the conditions. So I've always been, for many years now, it seems like I've just been interested in the conditions for the possibility. It's a Kantian phrase, but it seems to me to be a really helpful one to talk about that which already is, but yet not yet. So there's a sense in which we are always in conditions like this setting, and yet at the same time, these conditions that we find ourselves in, this setting, this stage, this venue, still has more that can be done with it. Right? So it isn't just the setting, it's what we make of it. And that might sound very straightforward, but I think that it's really important when we talk about sort of the ontology of learning, that in our relationship with the world. So let's pick it up then on meditation that was written on this date, March the 12th, 2004, and it's, I believe, PPM. We're up to meditation number 28. I think this is the 20th meditation, or maybe it's 29. I don't know. I'll have to check. Let's see. Okay. And it is 28. Okay. PPM28. We know from the Apology, Phaedo, and other Platonic dialogues that Socrates remained steadfast in the location where he could receive the tidings from the gods, and in turn pass along his pathos of wonder to others, and in making this offering, cultivate friendship. In Plato's Symposium, we encounter another version of the legend, one where Socrates recounts how his wandering was guided by different tidings. The context for the Symposium is a drinking party hosted by Agathon, a tragic poet. The guests for the occasion include Phaedrus, for whom Plato named another important dialogue, Aristophanes, the same poet who had written the satire of the clouds, which ridiculed Socrates, but who comes down with a serious bout of hiccups during the party that renders him incapable of delivering a speech. Ha ha ha. Plato getting back. And Alcibiades, a prominent statesman who bursts into the scene already quite inebriated, but proceeds to sing high praises to Socrates, who he declares has above all others compelled him to step outside of himself and acknowledge the trivial life he has been living, to the point where the shame has become unendurable. The fact that he is drunk when delivering his praise is, of course, a moment of deep irony. Another attendee who accompanied Socrates to the party was Aristodemos, described as, quote, a little man who never wore shoes, unquote. Aside from the important fact that this party is honoring Agathon's first prize victory at the festival that had recently taken place at the enormous theater of Dionysus in Athens, we must emphasize the occasion as a gathering of friends for an evening of celebration. The theme of friendship is set at the outset by Plato, who structures the dialogue as a recollection of a recollection, as a chain of memories held fast by friends, specifically friends who are wandering together. As Rouse summarizes, quote, the story of the banquet, as told by Aristodemos, who attended it with Socrates, is here retold by Apollodoros to a friend while they were walking together about 15 years later. Apollodoros is described in the dialogue, the Phaedo, as being present, weeping at Socrates' death about a year later, from when the Symposium takes place. The importance of being with others and learning together with friends is established in the opening of the Symposium, where Apollodoros tells his friend, as they walk along, that he heard the account of the evening with Aristodemos, quote, a lover of Socrates as much as anyone else in those days, unquote. Apollodoros is himself happy to retell the story, which he says he confirmed to Socrates sometime later. He cheerfully offers there isn't a better way to move along. He cheerfully offers that there isn't a better way to move along the road towards the city than, quote, for us to talk and listen as we go, adding, for that matter, I don't know anything that gives me greater pleasure or profit either than talking or listening to philosophy. But when it comes to the ordinary conversation, such as the stuff you talk about, financiers and all the money market, well, I find it pretty tiresome personally. And I feel sorry for that my friends should think that they're being very busy when they're doing absolutely nothing. Of course, I know your idea of me. You think I'm just a poor unfortunate and I shouldn't wonder if you're right. But then I don't think that you're unfortunate. I know you are. That's from the Symposium lines 173 through D. And again, that's Apollodoros, who was described in the Phaedo as weeping at Socrates' death, and who recounts the story of the Symposium. The link between memory and friendship is central to this dialogue, and it is the framework in which Socrates offers us an alternative account of his mission, his purposeful wandering. The central philosophical point of the dialogue we are recalling occurs when Socrates takes his turn in the friendly game of speech-making on the theme of love. Here is where we encounter an alternative version of Socrates' legend, where we learn that Socrates, who we have learned was put underway by the message of the gods, had his wandering guided by the doctrine of another teacher, Diotima. However, before we recall some elements of Socrates' speech, we should note that like Alcibiades, who burst into the scene inebriated, Socrates too joins the company in an altered state. That is, as he enters, it is evident that he arrives possessed by wonder, in the altered state of perplexity, and it is from this usual location that he will engage his friends in conversation and address them with his speech. It is crucially important for the reader to pay close attention when Aristodemos recalls, first, how he had crossed paths with Socrates, who was en route to Agathon's party, and invited the uninvited Aristodemus to join them. Extending his hand to his friend, Socrates recalls the Homeric proverb, "Unbidden do the good frequent the tables of the good." Symposium, lines 174 through B. But we must also listen closely to Aristodemos when he recalls how shortly after they began their walk to Agathon's place, quote, Socrates fell into a first fit of abstraction and began to lag behind, unquote. When they finally arrived at the party, Socrates, much to Agathon's surprise, remained outside, where, quote, he retreated in the next door neighbor's porch. "This is very odd," said Agathon. "You must speak to him again and insist." "But here I broke in," recalled Aristodemus. "I shouldn't do that," I said. "You'd be much better to leave him to himself. It is quite a habit of his, you know. Off he goes, there he stands, no matter where it is. I doubt he'll be with us before long, so I really don't think you need to worry about it." Symposium, lines 175 through B. And that, interestingly enough, is where it breaks off. Now, I really can't help but think it's really interesting that I'm in this porch here in Albuquerque when I'm reading about Socrates and this moment, and it's sort of confusing to follow, so let me back up. But he stops from going into Agathon's party and retreated in the next door neighbor's porch. So in the porch, the threshold, right? So the porch, very important. In the paper that I'm going to actually be delivering at this very conference, which is on Stoicism, I make the point towards the end of the paper that Stoicism is, of course, the name given to the school of those who gather together on a porch, which is stoa. The stoa, the porch. So they were the porch, those who gathered in the porch. And the porch is also deeply symbolic because it's the place that's outside of the house, it's outside of the building, right? So I turned away from the building, and the building is in front of me now, and yet it's not outside and in the world. So you're in between. This is the threshold here. So it's deeply coincidental that I found myself on a porch this beautiful day, this quiet day. I have to say, it's remarkable how quiet it is. So yesterday, which seems like a long time ago, because it was an awfully long day, I recorded from inside the studio. Very different setting, right? It was a very different setting for the meditation, and then today I'm here on the porch. So, a deeply coincidental situation, and to me, this is one of the things that's really important here, that I'm trying to call attention to, is that Socrates had this habit of being sort of caught in the moment, taken over, if you will, being deep in thought. This is why, Heidegger said that he was the purest thinker of the West, because he allowed himself to go there, right? He allowed himself to be drawn into this ecstatic moment, into the chirological, into the kairos, into that moment where thinking happens, that he didn't run from it. Interestingly enough, Heidegger says that, those of us who write actually run from that draft, that place of thinking, and so that in writing we flee from this moment. I see his point, but well, actually, I was going to say disagree with it, because I think that and this is kind of the whole, the basis of this experiment, is that I think in writing we can actually go there, and when it becomes a daily sort of meditative practice, in fact, we do go there. Heidegger's point is probably that the flow, or what he would call, using the Greek word aletheia, being's presencing and absency, the immediacy of that. I think what Heidegger's saying is most authentically experienced when one is silent. So we talked about that yesterday with the being in this threshold, where we encounter the limits of language, speechlessness. So it is a very powerful effacement with being's presencing and absencing, so the unfolding of existence, such that you are kind of outside of language. So Heidegger's point is that as soon as you enter into language, you're expressing or mediating that experience that is powerfully taking you away. So, for example, when Nietzsche says that the subject is annihilated by the primal unity, right, and the artist becomes the work of art, there's a sense in which the immediacy of that moment where one is taken away, where the subject is annihilated, I think this is what Heidegger may be hinting at. But in saying that, though, I have to say that I get the point, but I think that I for sure see that there's the alternative. So yes, out of that moment, that ecstatic moment that Socrates was in before he went into the party to participate in the symposium, and I believe that I'm going to take that up. So I'm going to continue on it tomorrow, the symposium. So this pathos, right, that he experienced, that yes, of course, there's a sense in which there's an immediate, pre-linguistic, ecstatic experience, right? And that leads to writing, that leads to the making of work of art, that the evocative speech emerges out of that powerful, immediate experience. However, I want to argue, and I think that I would want to approach a lot of art, a lot of philosophy done through music, done through painting, sculpture, that it's possible, and it happens, that the musician or the artist or the group of musicians, and in fact the learning community, can find themselves in that moment, in that flow. And so it's very much the case that it doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive. On the one hand, you have the immediacy of the experience, and on the other hand, you have that immediacy of experience happening when the artwork is being created, when the music's being performed, when the writer is writing. And I don't know that I would say that they're mutually exclusive. I don't know that Heidegger really believed that, actually, you know. And I think that when he was addressing his class in the lectures that were organized around the title "What is Called Thinking," and particularly the first lecture, which I've taught many times, and which fragments of it have been appearing in the writing, you know, when he says that most thought-provoking is that we're not yet thinking, and he's introducing the students into the sort of flow that's going to happen in the seminar, I think he's sort of alluding to the possibility that in the seminar, it may happen that they find themselves thinking. They're not yet thinking, but they may find themselves thinking. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it, here from Albuquerque, New Mexico, on the porch. That's the place in between the inside of the Hotel Albuquerque and the lovely terrace that's out there. And I'll be here for the next 5 days, right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I'll be recording more. And as my colleagues show up, perhaps they'll jump in on this too.